guys want to see some really old Warhammer stuff? I like Warhammer 40,000. I have many modern Warhammer 40k armies, but I do have a soft spot in my heart for the really, really old stuff. I got into Warhammer in Warhammer's 6th edition. I have many 5th edition codexes. In fact, behind me, I do own almost every codex ever published by Games Workshop. And even though I don't have the nostalgia, I feel nostalgic for these old-timey minis. And so for like the last decade, I've just been collecting old miniatures that I come across. I am an eBay fanatic where I am always looking at like what old stuff is out there. And every now and then it's cheap and I snag it and then I've put it in boxes. And recently I went through all the boxes and I kind of have multiple Oldhammer armies. I've got some really, really interesting old stuff, some of it in surprisingly good condition. And the most recent edition is what is in this box. We'll get to this sucker a little bit later, but I'm really excited for this. And this was really expensive. Mostly what I've been collecting all of these years are Space Marines. I have a number of old Space Marine vehicles. I've got this little Predator tank and I've got this Whirlwind. And I actually have some new on sprue old vehicles. I've got another Rhino right here. This is all of the components of a Rhino, but even more exciting, I have a Land Raider, an original beige plastic Land Raider. New on sprue, like mint condition. Oh, I have been thinking about what I want to do with this sucker, because obviously I need to put it together and I need to build it and it needs to be amazing. But really what I'm thinking about with all of the Space Marines I have is what chapter do I want to do? This guy is so mint condition, this little Land Raider. It's got the transfer sheet. There is no way that these transfers are usable at this point. I'm sure the glue has long since gone bad, but just look at this thing. We've got the Red Scorpions that would eventually become Forge Worlds chapter in like 2012. We got Mantis Warriors, we got Howling Griffins. We've got 2 different versions, or these might be Lion Heads for a different chapter, but these are definitely Space Wolf E. Like we got these Kakaradons before they were the Kakaradons. They were the Space Sharks back in the day. The Minotaurs. This is like Bad Ab War right here. This is old school Space Marines. And that's kind of what I want to experience because I collected Space Marines in like 6th edition Warhammer 40,000. So I've kind of only experienced the new stuff. A lot of the old Squaddy Marines that were pre-Primaris, but most of my Black Templar collection is newer Space Marines. This little sprue right here. This is an original RTB01 Space Marine sprue. I managed to pick up a couple more of these suckers at my friendly local game stores, used shelf, but these are the original plastic Space Marines. I think they were sold in boxes of 24. And this was a gigantic shift in like miniatures because no one was really doing plastic miniatures. And metal models were looking really, really good. And everything got a lot worse when they started making plastic miniatures because it was just a new manufacturing method. And I kind of like that worseness. I like that weird transitionary period where Games Workshop kind of downgraded their quality level with plastic so that they could ramp up production. And I think that limiting factor of what they could do with plastic led to some really, really interesting stuff. And it kind of led to what Games Workshop would become. But man, I don't know if I can ever clip this sprue, this original Navy RTB01 sprue. I've got a couple of sprues like this. I actually have this guy right here. This is a Genestealer 1992. And it's such an attractive object. This little sprue, it's got the base, it's got all of the arms and the Genestealer body. I was at IKEA the other day and I actually bought a little frame that's deep. And so I want to mount this Genestealer cult frame in this picture frame and hang it on my wall as just a weird little piece of wargaming history. It's so lovely. I actually got this in a starter set for Warhammer back in the day. It came with like 10 Ultramarines and it came with, I think, 12 Genestealers. I have more of these purple sprues somewhere. I think I put a couple of them together because I did just want some old Genestealers in my army. But this, yeah, look at, I mean, it's just such a lovely, lovely little thing. I'm gonna have to find another picture frame for you. You don't quite fit into this one. I'll have to find a bigger one. This is my box of Space Marines. It's almost all metal. This is a hefty, hefty box. I'm pretty sure I own 20 metal Terminators, I think 40 Space Marines of various Devastator, Assault Marine, and Tactical Marine varieties, and I own a crazy amount of Death Company Marines. I kept buying lots of Space Marines because that was the best way to get the most amount for the least amount of money, and every single lot I would buy would have Death Company troopers in it. And so I kept putting the Death Company to the side because I was thinking maybe I would do my Black Templar, but I would do a retro version of my Black Templar, or maybe I would do something else. But then I ended up with so many Death Company that I thought, maybe I just do an Oldhammer Death Company army and then use all of those models. The rules, I think this was in 2nd edition Warhammer, but at the start of the game, you'd put down your Blood Angels army, and then you would roll a d6 for every model. And on a certain roll, it might have been a 6, you would replace that model with a Death Company model, and then you would start playing the game. And the Death Company were just better than your regular Space Marines. And it was kind of to show like the Space Marines succumbing to the red thirst and just going mad. And it was a really cool little thing, and I wanted to experience that. I have so many metal Space Marines. It looks like this baggie is all heroes. I've got another baggie of Assault Marines, which is probably the heaviest bag. Oh no! Yeah, that was Assault Marines. Assault Marines with the metal jump packs. It took me so long to get a hold of the right number of metal jump packs, but I'm pretty sure I own 20 Assault Marines with jump pack in the old style. You would get 4 Marines missing arms because you were meant to put on the arms. Some of them I think have chainswords, but the lieutenant would have the power fist. Ah, look at these old little boogers. They're not as boogery as the RTB-01 Marines, but they're definitely teeny tiny little versions of Space Marines. I'm pretty sure I will one day do a Blood Angels Oldhammer army. I might do Lamenters, because even though Lamenters are a little bit more of a modern invention, they are a successor chapter to the Blood Angels, so I could get away with all of these Death Company Marines. And I just kind of feel like painting yellow. I feel like yellow armor would really show off these old Hammer sculpts really nicely. But I've got so many weird and wacky little things from back in the day. Another big problem is going to be weapons and arms. I have collected a decent number of Space Marine old school arms. This baggie has like 50, but I have no idea if these are lefties or righties or in the right sizes and amounts that I need. I know I have some weapon sprues. You guys gotta see these weapon sprues. They're glorious. Games Workshop 1990. When you bought a metal blister, it would come with a Marine that was missing arms, and then it would come with this plastic sprue that had 3 shoulder pads, 3 backpacks, and 3 bolters. And the bolters all had like a little shoulder stock that you always clipped off because it never ever fit the way you posed it on your Marine. It even came with a handle that you had to clip the handle off to get it to fit on your Space Marine's hands. And you got a little combat knife. I actually have this sprue. This is an early sprue, 1992, but this is a later production of it. You can tell from the packaging, but this is like a veteran sergeant upgrade kit. And so you can see a little power fist and a power axe, power sword, chain sword, bolt pistol, hand flamer, an auto pistol. I guess back in the day, Space Marines could carry auto pistols, and a las pistol. I can't. One day I'm gonna crack the seal on this sucker, and I'm just gonna get a whiff of the late 90s. $2.99. I don't think that's what I paid for this, but it's. I have close to 100 old Marines, and I would like to one day do a proper, beautiful, perfect Oldhammer army. And I think my philosophy has changed. Originally, I wanted everything to be exactly as it would be in like the year 2000. But now I'm thinking, I kind of want to take all of these Marines, like this little flamer guy here, and I want to try to make them as nice as they can be. Contrast paint, oil paint, airbrush. Can I bring all of these modern tools, put it onto these old minis? What do I end up with? Because I feel like I've never seen that before. I've seen a lot of classic Warhammer painted up in a classic way, and I've seen a lot of modern Warhammer. How good can this old stuff look? I've got a lot of Space Marines, but I do have a lot of other things as well. Oh, but before I move on from Space Marines, gotta talk about my Chaplains. I own almost every Chaplain that Games Workshop has ever made. I do own almost, because I know that there's a couple of them that I'm missing, but I got some of these that are technically Rogue Trader Space Marines. Ooh, I just noticed that this guy has a plasma. Oh, these are different guys. It's the same sculpt, but they definitely changed a couple of things to turn it into 2 unique sculpts. But I do own a couple of original Rogue Trader Chaplains. I believe there were 4 sculpts from back in the Dizay, and I own 3 of the 4. And then this guy is a little bit of a later, like 4th edition Space Marine that I have kind of kit bashed and converted, and he just happened to be in the drawer. But my Space Marines. You have seen them all in front of me. It's gonna be a lot of work and a lot of stripping of paint, but they're metal. I could put these things in acid and be completely safe with these. Well, I won't be safe, but the models will be. And they're gonna be so fun and so weird and old and squatty. But yeah, the only thing I'm missing really for my Space Marines, I have more than enough to do any army I wanna do. I would love one of the old school land speeders. One of the old, either the old one where it's just a couch with 2 guys sitting on it floating in the air, or the one where they kind of made it a little bit more of a vehicle that looks a little bit more like the plastic kit we ended up getting in like 4th or 5th edition Warhammer. But yeah, now leave a comment below telling me like what you guys think of the Space Marine army and what I should do. Blood Angels, Lamenters, something else? Do I put them on modern bases that are really big? Should my little Space Marine Sergeant be on a 40mm base? He probably should be. It would be really fun to take this to a tournament. Just run it all. I'd have to proxy a lot of stuff because now things are Primarisified, but I bet any opponent at a tournament would love to see this. Moving the Space Marines aside for a second though, I ran across this little sucker at a friendly local game store that's somewhat close to me. This is a Warhammer 40,000 epic scale Thunderhawk gunship. Nearly complete. I say nearly complete, is missing like 5 things, but that's as complete as one I've ever seen in my life. This thing is a chunky little piece of white metal that somebody lovingly built this little brass stand for. I don't know how else you would get this to actually stand up on a base. And the base, this little hexagonal base, is also white metal. This thing is epic from the days of Epic Warhammer, but it's a Thunderhawk gunship. This is the first Thunderhawk gunship, because this came out long before Forge World did their white metal Thunderhawk gunship in Warhammer 40,000 scale. And now it's been redone in resin a few times. It's missing the big back fin, the guns. I think these little front fins are glued on wrong. And it's missing the front foot. But I could plastic card those. I bet I could get this thing really singing. But would I paint it black for Black Templar? Would I paint it up in Lamenter style for my Oldhammer army? I don't know yet, and that's why it's just been collecting dust in my collection. But speaking of collecting dust, I got some orcs. This has been my more recent acquisitions. A friendly local game store had this little orc buggy from I think the days of Gorka Morka, and I got a hold of this, and then I got a hold of an orc truck. Recently at Adepticon, I found another buggy and truck, and I was able to track down a lot of old school orcs. I've got the original Warhammer starter set, 1 piece of plastic orc Gretchen, and the 2 piece of plastic orc boy. I've got, I think, about 30 each of those. And I found these minis, and maybe you guys can help me out with these. Are these, what was the name of that other space game that Games Workshop or Citadel made back in the day? Was it Space Crusade? It was like a board game, but it had It had a little bit of wargaming going on, but I think these might be Space Crusade orcs. Or maybe they're not even Games Workshop orcs at all, but they are plastic. And if you look at them, they're real funky. I also have this guy, which I've never seen this model in my life, but it clearly is an orc with shock attack gun. But I've never, like, it looks enough like the modern kit to be that, but I've never seen this model in my life. And so I had to pick it up. I don't know if this is just a kit that slipped by me and it's not in any of my Oldhammer books, or if this is maybe like a period replica or a period reproduction. Like, so, you know, because Games Workshop is kind of snuffed it out now, but there used to be a lot of people making, you know, pretty darn close to Warhammer 40,000 figures. So I don't know. This is a weird one, but I have a good sized orc army. Back in the day, you didn't need as many miniatures. And so I've got a Space Marine army. I've got an orc army, and I maybe even have some more armies. Chief among them, the Tyranids. I've got a lot of old school Tyranids. These very xenomorph inspired miniatures are the old Tyranid Ormagants. They're much bigger than the modern Ormagants, but there is something to them. They're blatantly ripoffs of the Alien movies, but I like their pokey, stabby hands and their scything talons, which these guys don't actually have scything talons in the game anymore. I've got a number of different Tyranid warriors. I've got the original white metal warriors that Games Workshop had for the Tyranid, and I have some more Space Crusade minis. I've got Space Crusade beige plastic Tyranid warriors. I think I've got 3 each. I have enough stuff to do. I wanted to do a kill team, but now the Tyranid kill team is not this anymore, because now we're in kill team 2. And so, but now I kind of have enough that I could just do a Tyranid army, because I have many more Ormagants, I've got many more warriors, and I've got regular old Gaunts. Look at these old little gremlins. Tyranid did not last long in this form, but I love them. These one single piece of metal Tyranid warriors, or Tyranid Gaunts, with the different like barbed stranglers and burst cannons. I don't even know some of these guns. Some of these I think just ended up being other things when Games Workshop eventually kind of, when the Genestealer cult range kind of solidified, some of these weapons changed. But I like the old kind of velociraptor-y dinosaur weirdness. They look pretty rough by modern standards, but I assume back in the day, people were like, that is the coolest miniature I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen anything like that. And now it looks like a piece of chewed gum, but it's got so many hooves and arms, and he's got like a little backpack that looks a little bit like a child's backpack that he's wearing. The Tyranid of this era were something else. It was the glam rock era of Tyranids. And I've got another fun addition to my Tyranid collection. I've got some Genestealer cultists. These, they weren't really ever in 40K. In 1st and 2nd edition, there was like Genestealer cults. It was kind of a specific thing even back in the day. But I got these, which are very, very nicely put together and painted. They carry like chaos weapons and a smattering of different Imperium weapons and no orc weapons, but some chaos weapons. This is a funky, fresh squad of Genestealer cultists, and they would go so nicely in an old school Tyranid army as like some heavy support. I don't own the Genestealer cult 2nd edition codex. I don't think. I don't know. I'd have to double check. But the Tyranid, I feel like are really, really calling to me. They are so funky and so interesting, and it would be really, really cool to get some old school 40K armies up and running and try it out. I remember reading my 5th edition codexes to play games of 6th edition Warhammer, because not every army got a 6th edition rulebook. And the rules are fine, but you had to read those codexes cover to cover to cover, because the rules and the flavor text were completely mixed together. And so 10th edition is definitely a more playable game, but old school Warhammer is kind of an RPG. And I've got orcs and space marines and Tyranids. And I got something else. I have a website, EonsOfBattle.com. EonsOfBattle.com is the place to find our merch like the Nick and J dice and is the best way to support us doing what we do with a membership. Each month, members get a credit that they can use on our new monthly terrain packs or any previous pack we have ever made. This April, we're going hard into skirmish fantasy warfare with 3 themes. The mythical forest, a set of fantastical trees held aloft by otherworldly levitating stones and waterfalls with the power of life. The eternal graveyard, a desolate shrine to the forces of death. Macabre headstones piled against the last remnants of a long-forgotten cemetery. And the cannibal camp, a ramshackle encampment where the marauders can divide up their spoils and cook up their victims. These sets are designed with storytelling in mind and are the right size and shape for games to spearhead. You can match the theme of your army, making your beloved collection look good while dominating the battlefield. These sets are available on our website as STLs, but don't worry if you don't have a 3D printer, they are available physically printed for you. I'm always keeping my eye out on Facebook Marketplace for some old Warhammer minis, and I've gotten lucky a few times. I remember meeting a fella in an Arby's parking lot where he sold me his whole Warhammer collection for like $50. It was mostly newer stuff in paint, but I snagged something. I snagged something big. All the way from the land of Canada, this is a box of retro metal. It's weird that I have this. It just makes me like smile. This is an entire Oldhammer demons army, a demon army of Slaanesh. In this box is 80 Juan Diaz demonettes with I think 20 Seekers of Slaanesh and 4 Fiends. This is the largest Oldhammer Demons army, maybe ever or anywhere. They're the most complete because these armies, they evaporate over time. People sell them on eBay or they just get thrown away or they're just too destroyed to play with or to collect or have. But this is like what would have been bought in like 1995. Somebody with deep pockets could go and blister by blister buy this army, and it's in my house now. The Juan Diaz Demonette sculpts are fan favorite minis for people who are into Slaaneshi demons. I kind of like the new plastic Demonette models, but there is something to the old pewter minis. And I've bought a smattering of these online over the years, but you never ever find them with the arms. These are little tiny models and they have even tinier arms. And every time I see them on eBay, go on eBay right now and look up Juan Diaz Demonettes, you will see maybe the metal bodies with the new plastic arms. And they kind of fit on there. They're a little bit too big, but this is a complete collection. It's 80 Demonettes. Where else in the world? I don't think at Nottingham you could find 80 Juan Diaz Demonettes. Let me know in the comments if someone else has a bigger demons army, but look at these things. They're beautiful. Can you hear the tinkle? Can you hear the tinkle of this precious, precious white metal? I also have plenty of Seekers of Slaanesh. I actually painted one of these way back in the day, and I'm gonna have to paint 20 more. But this is gonna be a really, really interesting army. And I do need a little bit of help with this. I am having a really hard time identifying what this is. It is clearly a Juan Diaz sculpt, and I think it's a fiend, but I can't find this online. I think it's meant to have like a rider sitting on top, and this little bump here is meant to accept someone's butt. And I don't know if it was a plastic kit that was meant to go up top here, or if they're all missing arms. I have 4 of these, and I don't exactly know what it is. But I think in my collection, they're gonna be fiends. But yeah, let me know in the comments below if you guys recognize this thing. I also have like 100 old school square bases. I guess technically this could have been for Warhammer Fantasy Battles or for Warhammer 40,000 because demons used to you used to be able to use the kits in both games. You still sorta can, but Games Workshop has kind of been separating them more and more and more. And so it's a little bit harder to do that now. But back then, if you didn't care about the square bases versus the round bases, you were just ready to rock and roll for both game systems. But yeah, I have a massive, massive demons army. And this one was weird because it wasn't like a slow grow over the course of a decade. It just arrived at my doorstep. But let me know in the comments below. I've got a lot of Oldhammer projects and I don't know exactly how to tackle it. Should I just do a giant Space Marine army? Should I piecemeal it and do a little bit of everything? Should I just drop everything and paint up 81 Diaz Demonettes? Like, I don't know. Should I put it back in the box and let it all marinate for another year? I don't know. But it's pretty cool. Thanks for watching.